attentions to it. John and my previous production, John's previous design at the Kansas City Repertory Theater was already 8 years old, and it was actually inspired by the success of the Great Lakes Theater Festival's production of Nicholas Nickleby, the 8-hour spectacle, and the kind of ersatz, let's pull together bed frames and bits of railing and pilasters and posts and assemble a set out of them. And so production in Kansas City very much kind of landed on that, because it was still very hot and very much a desire of that director. So we went ahead and looked at that and immediately just said, that's not what we're doing. Let's we didn't discuss it, except the original concept was a turntable for that production, which they couldn't finance. So one of the other options was, so should we just do this in a Victorian parlor that kind of transmutes into things? Should we develop a turntable? No. Should we set it in a props closet where everything is there and it simply shifts into place? And then it was like, no, we want to be able to project that this is a ghost story about Christmas.
Exactly, and the magic.
Which is the original, Jerry's, you mentioned he wanted to go back to the source material, and it is that, clearly.
Well, and the way that things can appear and disappear. And I mean, when you talk about a turntable, that to me, I'm looking at Jerry holding this, it brings me to that armoire, which, people still don't know how that thing moves around, and right. the simplicity of putting someone inside to move it it's so simple, and yet people are amazed with that. The disappearance of Christmas Past, which has been embellished over the years, but it's always been a trap. Which is an old-fashioned
star trap, right?
Yeah. And the Christmas Future, although it's so much easier to manipulate now than it was when we originated it. It's just based on puppetry. And Jerry did a lot of study in Asian culture. He spent time in Japan, and I see that kind of aesthetic in this, in terms of these very simple and yet effective. And I mean,
the stilts on Christmas Present too, very simple, but wow, people
those
are like,
painter stilts.
But it's so effective.
Back to the design aspect, what John was really ultimately, I think the aesthetic was, we don't want to give away anything until that moment happens. Then we want this to be like a magician's box. We want things to transpose suddenly. Things will revolve in the blackness. Things will break open. Things will transcend or descend. He likened it to a Spielberg film. I was talking with him this week, and he says, this wants to give the impression of normalcy, and then someone opens a closet door and suddenly the world is overwhelmed by monsters and transpositions in time and space, and I think that's very much what the set and Jerry.
But then, do you remember Mary Jo's reaction the first time? Mary Jo was like, "But where's there a place to hang a light?"
That's the lighting designer.
Oh because of this black void. What they said to her is, "We don't want to see the black void." Oh. And in all of the key lighting positions, there were things blocking her light. So it was,
and it was interesting, because I remember with Mary Jo, John said, well, when you get the lights in there, when we figure out where those are going to be, you're going to have atmosphere to light. I want us to have hazers and fog, and I want the air to actually take on the light.
Do you remember any of these?
Yeah. And these were, let's do something that has not been done in A Christmas Carol, just to confirm the fact that we are in a ghost story. That it's without going.
Where their eyes light up.
Yeah. Love it.
Their eyes turn red when Christmas past is about to enter.
And this gorgeous piece, I remember the scale of
So
this
beautiful.
and the tons of real 24 karat gold leaf that were used on it.
And then one of the things that was added after the first few years is that lighting effect from behind it with the lights that go everywhere. That was not in the original.
Yeah.
Christmas presents entered the cornucopia.
So when it comes forward, the lights behind were not.
Those weren't original.
Oh, okay.
That got added maybe the second or third year by Mary Jo.
Now, I don't remember where these are.
The doll houses, they're when they're
in the
flying.
windows.
No, they're the doll houses on
Rolling.
top of the shop windows, but also
Okay, yes.
in the original Flying with Christmas Past.
Yeah.
There's one down right and one down
Okay,
left that are
yes.
turntabled around.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's how we know that they're flying above the city.
Yes, yes.
And this is so the spider webs because
Welded.
Yeah, this is the
Scrooge
Scrooge
and
and Marley
Marley
sign
Shop sign.
that
yeah.
is based with all these spider webs on them because Marley's been dead these 7 years, and nothing in that shop, nothing in that office
touched
ever
or cleaned,
changed. Yeah.
Back when these were created, all of this lettering was from a product called Letraset, which was basically a rub-on lettering, and you had to pencil it out and figure out where each piece was going and then lay it out. And then we went back in with brushes around the edge of the Fezziwig and hand painted each of those. And the other thing that was used in these, which they don't make anymore, is a form of spray paint which was made by the Magic Marker Company. And beautiful. So that's how we got all these saturated jewel tones. That's where the saturated color comes from, the jewel tones. But what we had to do in the design studio to get this through to the shops and in construction and on the stage on time was John said to me, we need you at your most precise. But John said, we need to send drawings to the shop that are so precise that nothing can go wrong. So we developed the motif that's out here in the hall of the toys, the wreath of toys, and he said, okay, so we need you to go ahead and break this down in a way that it can go into the shop, and before the sculptors ever get their hands on it, it will be pre-sculpted. And we had this brilliant artist named Blake Ketchum, and wonderful, wonderful sculptor. And she and I had worked together previously on the Bacchae.
Yeah.
Yeah, together, doing the sculptural pieces together. And so that was actually drawn so that each of the individual toys or section of toys or dolls was projected upon a prefabricated thickness of foam core, either 2 inches or 4 inches or 8 inches or 6 inches, projected out, cut together, glued down using foam epoxy into a sculpture so that when you looked at it, you went, oh, the whole thing is pre-sculpted. This would have taken weeks just to get it to that level, and oh my goodness, I took the doll's face down by too many inches. Yeah, and so, lovely. And so here you can see, clearly the different layers that were in there, and you can even see the separation between the individual pieces. So that cut down the carving time on that to about maybe a week and a half.
I was curious about the palette, because how much of the there's so, today, we look at it today where we've been through these eras of, earth tones and all of this, and it's very teal and rose and pink, which feels of its time to me. And I was just curious how much was influenced. But you go back and look at Victorian Christmas cards, and they're brightly colored.
Yeah, and
too.
John has always been a colorist. He has a really strong sense of color. He got that from his mentor, Donald Owenschlager, who had a really strong sense of color. Teal color is actually a John Isel blue, we call it.
Because I remember that in She Loves.
That's good to know.
That's John Isel.
Okay.
And so the blue and the lavender shadow work actually goes back to his mentor, Donald Owenschlager, who realized that if you want to go ahead and you put a shadow into something. If you go, well, it's going to be gray or dark or brown, it's going to just look dirty. Whereas the violet or the lavender will lower the tonality without killing it. It'll still be as responsive to the light, but it'll still speak of, the tonal shifts that we actually see in rooms. I mean, you look over here and you'll notice that the top of the room goes darker, and we have this warm band right around the actors' faces. And we actually paint that in.
He would look at illustrations of Christmas Carol. This is Ignorance and Want. This is exactly what he did, except that they're on the other side. But all of those street scenes were all based on, books of their Victorian Christmas street scenes. That's what, technically we call them in one, meaning that those, the walls cut all this playing space to downstage toward the audience. So they're like a Victorian Christmas card.
Yeah.